Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a really powerful idea about this universal human struggle for freedom. And it all comes down to this core question that I think we all ask ourselves at some point. What does it really mean to be free?
So, let's just start with a feeling that I'm pretty sure everyone can relate to. You know that feeling? When there's a war going on inside your head? You want to do the right thing, but then you find yourself doing the exact opposite. It's like you're constantly being pulled in two different directions at once.
And look, this internal battle is nothing new. We're talking thousands of years ago. The Apostle Paul was crying out with this exact same frustration. He knew what was good, but he kept getting tripped up by the very things he was trying to avoid. It's a timeless, totally human struggle.
So this internal battle, that's going to be our first focus. And the source material we're looking at today, it calls it more than just a struggle. It actually calls it a form of slavery.
Now, this is a really important distinction. This isn't about being controlled by some external force, some outside power. The key idea here is that we can become slaves to our own internal world. Our habits, our desires, the things we just can't seem to break on our own.
And this brings up a really tough question for us today. We value freedom more than anything, right? But this forces us to stop and ask what really governs our lives. What's actually in the driver's seat? We like to think we're free, but man, it is so easy to become enslaved to modern forces. The constant chase for success, the little dopamine hit from our phones, the endless need for other people's approval. These things can end up controlling us way more than we realize.
Okay, so if we're all kind of internally enslaved, how in the world do we get free? Well, the sermon offers this incredibly powerful solution. It calls it a declaration of liberation.
This one sentence right here, this is the whole turning point. For anyone who feels trapped in that cycle of trying and failing, this is presented as a declaration of absolute, total freedom.
But no condemnation isn't just about, ignoring our faults or sweeping them under the rug. It's actually a legal term. It means the trial is over, the verdict is already in, and it's not guilty. Why? Because the debt, it argues, has already been paid by someone else.
Okay, so you've been declared free. Awesome. But what does that freedom actually look like day to day? And this is crucial. It is not a license to just go do whatever you want. This is a huge distinction. This kind of freedom isn't anarchy, it's the exact opposite. It's being empowered to finally do what is right, to create a new kind of order in your life instead of all that chaos.
Here's a great way to think about it. Traffic laws, right? A stop sign feels restrictive, but what happens if we all just ignore them? Total chaos. Following the rules is what actually creates the true freedom to travel safely and get where you're trying to go. Now, to really understand how this works, we need to look at these two competing laws that are always at work inside of us, and they're pulling us toward two very, very different destinies. On one side, you've got what's called the law of sin and death. Think of this as our default setting, the thing that's always pulling us toward those destructive patterns. But on the other side is the law of the spirit of life, a totally new principle that lifts us up toward peace. Think of it like physics. This is a great analogy. The law of sin and death is like gravity. It's this constant, natural downward pull on everything. But the law of the spirit of life is like aerodynamic lift. It's a more powerful principle that actually overcomes gravity and allows you to soar.
This all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But how does it actually work in practice? This final piece is all about turning this new freedom into something you do every single day.
And here's where the rubber meets the road. The choice between those two laws, between gravity and lift, it doesn't happen out there in your circumstances. It happens in here, in your mind. Your thought life is the real battlefield for freedom.
And really, it all boils down to two different mindsets. There's the mind of the flesh, which is all about focusing on our own selfish desires. That path leads to what the Bible calls death, just a spiritual deadness. But the mind of the Spirit focuses on a higher purpose, and that leads to life and peace.
So, to make this super modern, think about it like this. In our age of social media and endless content, what does your mind subscribe to? Because the channels and the ideas you let in every single day, they're determining which law you're actually living by. This shows that real freedom isn't passive. It's not something that just happens to you. It's a practice. It means you have to intentionally starve those old patterns that are holding you back, while actively feeding the new mindset that leads to life and peace. Ultimately, this becomes the marker of a whole new identity.
It's not just a title you claim, it's a life that's defined by what leads you. It's about being actively guided by this new principle of life and freedom.
So, it really all comes down to this. You have one life, and the direction that life goes is determined by the principle you choose to live by.
This grand, almost cosmic idea of freedom, then, isn't really cosmic at all. It's intensely practical. It all lives in that small daily choice of what you feed your mind. Because in the end, your thoughts are what truly direct your destiny.
So we'll end with this question to think about. What would actually change? In your relationships, in your work, in your own inner peace? What would change if you started living under this new law? What would your life look like if you were truly, finally free? That's the possibility being held out by this declaration of liberation.